Weather forecasters have warned that a hurricane threatening the Atlantic island of Bermuda is now an extremely dangerous Category 4 storm. Hurricane Nicole has winds of more than 200 kilometres an hour. We've been speaking to government officials who have told us that they're telling people to stay indoors and brace for a direct hit. Hurricane winds are likely to spread 65 miles from its centre, and water levels could rise as high as 2.5 metres above normal. But let's take you back to last week when Hurricane Matthew caused devastation in Haiti, killing more than 800 people. The nearby city of Jérémie saw 80% of its buildings levelled. In Sud Province, 30,000 homes were destroyed. Now, would the devastation have been so bad if it had happened in a developed country? Well, the United Nations thinks not. They've released a report today which has analysed 20 years of disaster events in which 1.3 million people died, and has shown that 90% of them happened in low and middle income countries. The UN Secretary-General's Special Representative for Disaster Risk Reduction is Robert Glasser, who joins me now from Brussels. Good to have you with us, Robert. I suppose the findings were not that surprising, though, in your report.
No, I suppose not, because we know that poverty involves all sorts of challenges like weak institutions, fewer resources, often remote rural communities that are difficult to reach. So there are a variety of factors that connect socioeconomic status and vulnerability to these hazards.
You're talking about such big issues, challenging issues. What are your recommendations?
Well, we do know, notwithstanding Haiti's the terrible damage and loss of life, hundreds of people in this latest storm, we do know that low-income countries can make enormous progress. We have the example of Bangladesh, in which they've moved from storms that caused 10,000 deaths to recent storms of similar tracks and intensities that have cost hundreds of lives. And so it is possible, even for low-income countries, to make significant progress in reducing disaster risk.
We've seen the devastation, though, in Haiti, and you have to feel for people in that country after suffering from a terrible earthquake and now the hurricane as well. I mean, how do you help a country like Haiti now?
Well, I think actually after the earthquake, there was a huge amount of effort that commenced to build Haiti's preparedness for future disasters, not just earthquakes, but also storms like the hurricane that struck a short time ago. And that work has been ongoing with setting up operation centers, with re-establishing the Met Office, which was destroyed in the earthquake, with practicing drills for disasters. That work was underway, and I'm certain, I feel quite confident that there would have been more loss of life if those efforts hadn't continued. So that has to be maintained, those efforts now after this horrible disaster. They have to step up the efforts, and it's quite important for donors to maintain the commitment over years to embed these changes in the system. Some work had started, but we noticed that it had tailed off towards the last year or two.
Robert, which other vulnerable countries are you particularly concerned about?
Well, there are many countries that are experiencing virtually every hazard you can think of. Haiti is one example of that. But in the Ring of Fire in Asia and Southeast Asia, you have the Philippines, you have Indonesia, you have wealthy countries, because obviously this is one of those issues that isn't a north-south issue, strictly speaking, as we've seen in Japan with the Great Eastern Earthquake and in the United States with Hurricane Katrina. But Philippines, Indonesia, just everything from forest fire, from fires to storms to earthquakes to volcanic eruptions, just enormous exposure to these hazards.
Robert Glasser, thank you very much for joining us from Brussels. Good to have you with us.
Thanks, my pleasure.
Let me